G'day, guys. Welcome back to another episode of the Cool Dad Collective podcast, the podcast that is for dads by a dad, talking everything there is to talk about fatherhood. And I'm very, very excited today. We've just had a little bit of a chat before starting our recording, but I'm very excited today to be chatting across the river. I do a lot of chats across the river. We've had to work out times here, but I'm talking to J.T Doscher, who is a PEDS PT. So a lot of stuff going on, a lot of questions I think I've got, and a lot of questions I'm hoping that I'm going to ask that a lot of parents are probably thinking the same, man. But before we start, I always like to go into it because I know you are a father yourself. And just going into your dad's stats, man. How many kids do you have?
So we have two. So I have Theo, who's 20 months old, and then we just welcomed Margot, who's just over a month.
Oh wow! So you're like, I didn't realize that actually. So you're fresh into
Oh,
it.
we're fresh. I mean, I hope you didn't see it in my eyes. I tried to wake up a little bit earlier to like get going here. But yeah, no, we're pretty fresh. Margot was born on the 15th of June, so we're just over a month.
Oh, that's awesome, man. And I guess just random off the cuff, but like early days of fatherhood, do you feel
Yeah.
like that pressure given your job and stuff like that to be like, I've got to be on the movement stuff and the milestone stuff fairly quickly? Or how do you feel with all that sort of stuff?
All right, so that's a great question because the experiences with Theo versus Margot are a little different, right? So, um, with the movement stuff early on, in my job, we're always trying to advocate that you could basically do it right when you come home from the hospital, if not in the hospital. But the difference being, and I'm sure so many parents go through this, the balance of your first child where you have nothing else kind of, I mean, you have other things going on, but that's your main focus. And then all of a sudden, now you have a toddler and a little one, and you're like, all right, I got to start diving into the movement. I got to start diving into tummy time, sidelining, all the stuff that I'm sure we'll get into.
Yeah.
Um, but navigating what's been interesting and navigating the wake windows with when our toddlers doing things with when we're free during the day. I'm very blessed that like the flexibility of my now job, where I was in the clinic the first time when I had Theo, now I'm doing this full time, so I have much more flexibility. But like us being home, we're able to do it. There isn't a pressure to start early because I feel like a lot of the play comes natural for myself and now my wife, Amy, who learned things through Theo. But there are some days where it's like we'll get through the day and we're doing more baby wearing this time, which we can also talk about more.
Yeah, yeah.
Uh, just because it's easier with a toddler. But we'll do the baby wearing, which gets a little bit more activation. But there'll be sometimes at the end of the day. So like even myself, I'm like, oh, I don't think we got a ton of the work like we wanted to do. We didn't hit tummy time as much as we wanted today, just
Oh,
because the day
that makes me feel
or
so
whatever.
good, man, because I have experienced the
Yeah,
exact same thing with my second daughter, man.
yeah.
It's
Um,
like, yeah.
and then you realize, and it's like, all right, let's check in. I'm gonna have a little bit more of a keen eye than others, but like I'm like, I know Margot's doing great. Like, head control looks good, all et cetera. But there's definitely like this. I it's also like foggier for me. So I
Yeah.
don't remember Theo as much in this stage because I felt like I was just learning being a parent, and I'm comfortable with children, of course. But Amy and I even talk about it. I'm like, did Theo sleep this much? Were we doing this as much? And honestly, at the end of the day, it's just like, how are they doing as a child? And
Yeah.
they're both doing great, which is we're blessed and we're lucky. Um, but yeah. So to answer your initial question, sorry, I tend to talk a little
No, I
bit.
love it, man. I love it.
Is um, you know, I, we don't feel the pressure, but there are definitely some days where we're like, oh, we didn't do as much as we thought with movement. It's like, you know what, maybe we just got to emphasize a little bit tomorrow. So I hope that brings like a sense of like normalcy to others that,
Oh,
myself.
massively, man.
Look,
Massively.
I'm not waking up and like I'm not like Margot, we got to do this, this, and this. Like that's my whole thing is that if you start young and just mix in what we call purposeful play in pediatric physical therapy, it shouldn't feel like work. It
Yeah.
actually should feel like play the entire time, and it should feel very natural and comfortable so that it's not like I need to dedicate these 30 minutes to be doing this with my child. It's like, no, you know what, we worked on this a little bit here, this a little bit there and stuff. So, sorry, like I said, long-winded, but it's definitely been a different experience with Theo versus a Margot this time around with early on gross motor movements for sure.
Yeah, absolutely, man. And I'm actually really glad that you touched on that because I think that's a really common thing is that like you're right. It's your first child, like they're your only focus. But then when you have a toddler, and I'm actually, like I said, I'm so glad you mentioned it, because there are those days that you probably need to do something, but when you're balancing that one child, you have so much more energy in the afternoon, or when you get a chance to do it, to be like, okay, we're going to focus on this. I know with Summer, my youngest, we had the same sort of thing. Like, obviously kids are different milestones, they meet at different times, but we had that feeling of like, is Summer missing these things because it's us, or is it because they're different, or are we not emphasizing it? And that balance, I always say to people when they go, what's harder, one to one or one to two? And you're just like, having one is hard for the parenting reason. You're learning to parent, but having two is so hard with the balancing, and trying not to compare so much is such a really tough sort of line to walk as well.
Totally, totally.
Yeah,
Well, what do they always say, right? Comparison is the thief of joy. Like
exactly. Yep.
I feel like I am so the comparison thing, which is very interesting, I get a ton. Right. A lot of the times the delays in gross motor milestones or something is not sometimes is the pediatrician seeing the child and then recommending further, but many times it's from I hate to stereotype, but it's
Mm.
kind of the case, like mommy and me groups more than fathers recognizing it, because there's just
Yep.
not as much opportunity. There's, oh, I went on a play date and I noticed, oops, sorry, there's a bee flying on our
That's
screen
all
there.
good,
There's a play
man.
date. There was a play date, and I noticed my child isn't keeping up with
Yep.
this ex
Yep.
child or whoever friend it is, right? So it's interesting, the comparison between your baby number one, baby number two, right? And your oldest. I know your youngest is Summer. Your oldest is
Skylar. Yep. So she's four and a
Skylar. Thank
half.
you.
Yep.
And a half. I thought that's what her age was, right? So
Yep.
you're kind of comparing the two of them, and then you'll get the comparisons, where it's to your peers' children or whatever, and then um, what I always try to emphasize, because I'll tell you that the hardest part of my job is not working with the kids most of the time. Of course, there's the very medically complex ones, and
Yep.
those are tricky. But it's really a lot of times working with the parents, be it whatever their personality is or whatever. You're coaching them and you're working with them as much as you're working with the child. And I'm always trying to tell the parent that, if your child is moving on their own timeline or doing whatever, you just want to be gauging themselves against themselves,
Mm.
gauging the child against the child. Is that
Yep.
child progressing? Is that child doing, um, what they're supposed to be doing. And I like to say that comparisons are helpful, for like the joyous moments, so that you can then relate and say, oh, now my child is doing this. But it's such a fine line to walk, where it's either like, a joyous, excited component of, now they are keeping up with their friends, and trying to spin it in a positive light, versus they're not keeping up with their friends. Oh, they're having difficulty maintaining this. So I want to try to keep it more positive than more negative, and many times it is the reason that they're now inquiring for physical therapy, for occupational therapy, for speech therapy, whatever it is that's helping to foster early childhood development. But really trying to compare is it just it you get it's not going to benefit you. You get kind of caught up in a negative
Yeah.
cycle. And if you can try to spin that in any way you can to be more positive overall, it becomes a more rewarding experience, I feel like, for the parents to, and just in general. But it's such a common topic, lesson, theme that we're kind of always talking about as pediatric physical therapists, is that.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah, and I think it's yeah, it's so true. With it is a very parental thing, especially with that second child as well, man. But yeah, so for those who aren't aware, and I think with I found your Instagram, and I love your Instagram, and we're probably going to talk about it a lot during the podcast, which is fantastic. But for those who aren't aware of what a pediatric PT does, what is your focus, and what is your, I guess, what is your job, to say it in a simpler term? And like, how do you do it? What do you look for? Things like that. I'll let you explain it, because I know you're going to do a way better job than I am.
Sure. All right. So physical therapy, large topic, right? And then that's the umbrella, and then you got all your little specialties underneath. One of the cool things about physical therapy is there are specializations underneath. For example, you can get like your orthopedic certified specialty, or your pediatric, or your neuro, right? So, but you don't necessarily need to go to further schooling to then go into these different specialties. So you can help so many different people out. So, a pediatric physical therapist is going to be working with children from 0 to 18. Now, depending on the setting, you're going to have different population, different types of children, diagnoses, honestly, plan of care,
Mm.
and your goal, oversimplification here is going to be be facilitating gross motor development.
Yeah.
Now, what that means for each child can be very different. For example, if a child has just general gross motor delays, let's say they are struggling, you know what, we'll keep it simple, right? They're just struggling with general tummy time and, maybe, the parents weren't able to keep up with it as much. And all of a sudden now we're just a little bit behind on our gross motor milestones. We're there to help foster a child through that. In a more, medically complex situation, let's say your child is born at 28 weeks and now we're at an uphill battle. You have a premature baby. You're doing, you're doing all you can. Maybe they stayed in the NICU, different things like that. We know that cerebral palsy might be a possibility. And now we're there to be facilitating gross motor milestones as well. But now we're doing it with a different eye of we're helping to facilitate their overall care, and let's say now we're 2 years old or 3 years old and we actually get that diagnosis, and now it's changing where it's more of this lifelong type of treatment, like through them being 18 with ebbs and flows of episode on, episode off type of thing. So there's tons of variability right there.
Yeah.
And then you'll also get variability where I work in a hospital. I also do this on the side, which we'll talk about, but I've worked in a hospital. I've worked in an outpatient clinic. You can work in schools. You can work in early intervention when you go into people's homes. And I say that you could work in a hospital. You could do an outpatient hospital. You can do inpatient hospital.
Yeah.
There's
Yeah.
just so many different options, but like the overarching is just 0 to 18 gross motor development, musculoskeletal issues, neuromuscular issues, general gross motor delays. Any of them can kind of fall into that, which honestly presents the variability, I think, is what, well, working with kids is what drew me to it. But I
Yeah.
find that just how many different things that you can encounter on a day-to-day basis of, let's say I have my eight patients in the hospital. I'm working with such different things every hour. It keeps you on your toes and it keeps you having fun with it, which at the end of the day is what you want to be doing with your job, right?
Yeah.
But it's so cool. Like if you get bored of, for me, an orthopedic physical therapist that, maybe is working on shoulders all day, that bores me. I understand there's a point, there's a component, not a component, there's a need for that, but
Yeah.
I need that variability that you get with children, and pediatric physical therapy is just so cool. I love it.
Oh, absolutely, man. I fully get what you mean when you say you need the variability, like being a teacher and having different, like, you have different kids that you need to work with. It keeps you on your toes massively, like, and it does, I guess, stop that like boredom and monotony in the job as well, having so many different things, which is it's really cool, man. I think it's unreal that you're so specialized in so many different ages, but I also can obviously say that that is an incredible thing to be able to work with so many different kids and different age groups, and dealing with so many different things too. And when I came across your account, and one of the things I loved about it is, as a dad, those early days are very, very difficult to sort of understand what you need to do, especially in like the first, just first few months. And one thing I loved about your content is you focus very heavily also on those first few months on, I guess I'm going to call it, like, without lack of a better term, like the potato phase, when,
No, I was about to
you know
say
what
they
I
were
mean?
potatoes for
Yep,
about three
yep.
months.
And exactly right. And
They're
they
going to be
do
a
sort of,
potato.
yeah, they do lay around. You do a lot of waiting, and there is times where you're like, what do I need to be doing to, be, I guess, forming these things? Because it's one of those, it's like an investment, right? Like, you invest early and you reap the rewards later on. And I think it's really hard. It's like delayed gratification because you don't see those things flourish straight away. Like, it takes months and months. And I guess number one thing, obviously, we talk about tummy time a lot,
Sure.
and tummy time can be, as someone who's been through it twice, it can
Yeah.
be very frustrating, for two reasons. One reason, obviously, you sit there and you're like, they get up and they get down. But the other reason is too, it's very nerve wracking at times too, like watching them struggle. And I think as a parent, especially as a new parent, you have this like internal response of not wanting to see your kid sort of struggling, but you also want them to learn. So I guess my first question to you is obviously the importance of tummy time, but I guess the best way to go about tummy time from an early age when that neck strength is almost non-existent. Like what's sort of your outlook on tummy time, and how can dads, I guess, and mums, but like I guess start early, but start them in the way that's going to be beneficial for them, even though you probably won't see the results immediately.
Yeah, sure. That's such a great question. I actually met with my friend, who I'd met through this page, and we met for coffee yesterday, and we were talking about how we hate the term tummy time.
Yeah.
Um, I don't hate it, but it like, not 100%, but like it puts this pressure on that we need to be putting our babies flat on their bellies like all the time. And there's so many different things that can be making tummy time challenging, be it strength deficits, be it reflux, be it
Oh, vomit.
torticollis.
Yeah, vomit when after a breastfeed. Oh my God, trying to time it so like you're doing
Yeah,
tummy time not directly after being breastfed, but that's like the happiest time for them. Yeah.
right. But in the wake window of when they're young and they're up
Yeah,
for 30 minutes, and
that's
yeah,
it.
it's
Yep, yep.
so um you know, quality over quantity. I understand why the recommendations are there from the Pediatric Association, but it just like parents can hyperfixate on these numbers, and it's like if I'm not hitting this is the bad thing, and it's like quality over quantity. Again, we talked to like we kind of mentioned this earlier, like gauge your child against your child, right? So if they're improving, great. Um, what we have to remember about early on, particularly in the first 3 months of life, is we like to kind of call any active time off of their back is basically tummy time.
Yeah.
So it's really just about being off of our back. So tummy time can include being just flat on our belly, tummy time, being on a wedge, being on a parent, leaning back and just doing this and laying your child and just looking and having that moment and that intimacy with your child, tummy time. Then you get into, side lying play, which is like honestly so helpful and like a powerhouse to help support rolling. But also it's a little easier than being fully on their belly, and they can like experience things off to their side, laying, and it's a little bit more comfortable. You can support them there. I mean, shoot, even the way you hold your child, you can do Supermans. You can kind of start to, as they're a little, maybe not a month, that's a little hard for them, but like you can start to support them that way and moving them around. And there's so many different ways to do tummy time and to try to get floor play, which is how we like kind of like to frame it a little bit more.
Yeah.
Um, and that floor play is crucial. We don't want these parents to feel like we're torturing our children by
Yeah.
putting them on the ground, by doing these things. So uh, people who listen to this find me, do that. I'm not gonna, if you want the information, I'm here for you to help. I'm not gonna try to pitch my page or anything like that,
I
but like
would. Did you can pitch your page because I love your page. Do not feel
uh,
embarrassed about that at all,
look,
brother.
sometimes it's if you're getting caught up in it, you just reach out. Honestly, just like now we're trying to be more accessible as physical therapists. Honestly, the medical field in general, like you're seeing so many more pediatrician pages, neuro pages, all these different things. But like you can always just message us and just like look for a little tip. Like a one virtual consult, like one helpful session early on can pay off dividends down the road. You might not see it overnight, which you mentioned, right? That none of these gains are going to be overnight, but like setting ourselves up at that point to be like, what do I do here? And it's like, no, you could try A, B, C, and D and have all these different backup options so that you don't feel like you're torturing your child, and it makes it a more enjoyable experience. I can't tell you how many times I'll talk to parents. I'm with their 7 or 8 month old child. How did tummy time go when they were younger? How are we doing in floor play? How are we doing with these different things? Oh, we avoided it because they cried so much. I, it's right. Tummy time floor play can be really challenging. So that's why that reframing, and I feel like I kind of talk about reframing a lot. Reframing to know that it's not only on our belly. Um, uh, but at the same time, your child is going to fuss, and that's okay. And recognizing like fussing versus crying and being
Yeah.
upset, um, it's their only way of telling us that this is hard. I don't know if anyone would go to a personal trainer that at one point in time they didn't turn to and being like, "Man, you're kicking my ass right now." Like that is a baby fussing in tummy time. Is they're turning around and they're telling you like, "You're kind of kicking my ass right now. Like you're
Yeah.
they work hard. That is their physical activity for the day.
Yeah.
We're not going to make variable change if we don't push them hard enough or if we push them too hard. It's about finding that nice little pocket. And knowing that you can find that pocket with doing those different movements, like, right, okay, so let's say they just fed. It's been one of those long days we mentioned earlier, and it's like, you got to get something in, but they just ate. You know what? Just do sideline for that moment. Like, don't get caught up in having to put them on their belly so that they're gonna spit up. You know that's gonna come. Maybe sidelining doesn't trigger a spit up as much, and you just do that maybe a little bit longer. You play with some contrast cards, and that can become your quote unquote tummy time, but really floor play for that wake window or that portion of the day. And once you start recognizing that there's more things that you can do and more opportunities for floor play, it takes the pressure down a notch, I feel like, and it makes it a little bit more accessible for parents, especially new parents going through it the first time with their firstborn.
Yeah, I love that advice, man. I love the whole because I think as parents too, we do get caught up in that all or nothing approach. It's like, well, if they're only going to do a little bit, is there any point of doing it? But I think, focusing on what you just said about the whole like, if they can do a little bit or the side stuff and stuff like that, I think it's a good thing to, like you said, reframe that, oh, they didn't do it for this long or they didn't do it on their tummy, like having it like, but they were on their side, but and like reframing that whole structure, I think takes a lot of pressure off parents, man. Because I know, one thing you mentioned, and I'm really glad you mentioned it. Like I feel like I'm saying I'm really glad you mentioned, but that's just you reassuring me. But when having them on your chest, man, like I think that
Yes.
that changed tummy time for me because in my view, with like limited knowledge, especially with my first daughter, for me tummy time was supposed to be on their belly and you're trying to get them to put there but the amount of times that I had Skylar laying on me and I remember her first smiles just like putting her head up and smiling at me and I guess having me in front of her was almost promoting her to sort of get her head up and I think if we look at it like that I'm kind of now looking back in my journey as well and going my kids actually did so much tummy time because of
Yeah, they did.
just that one pose and it's very you got to be really careful because I don't really I never really considered that tummy time a lot and babies do that a lot like babies are on us laying down and I guess you can change the angle up a lot more easily if you're sort of laying down and that's a really good point to make so yeah.
Let's run with that for a second. And I know the sun just kind of came out
Oh,
behind me,
don't
so I'm
stress them out. I can still see you. It's all good.
So right, all right, ready? In that situation, we're talking early on stuff. We breastfeeding journey for mothers, whether they're doing it or not, right? There's so much emphasis on skin to skin contact and the breastfeeding and all of that for moms. It's just as important for dads. And you might have your chest hair and that might be in the way or whatever you're
Yep, yeah.
doing, but like that's skin to skin for dad. And I recently did a post early on with Margot. She was like a day old. We was in the hospital. We were just chilling. I was leaning back and she was just hanging out on my chest. Like, yes, that is tummy time. A lot of times when they're that young, they're snuggling and they're sleeping. They're kind of like in that tree frog pose where they're kind of getting up on you and snuggling. But just know, like, if then all of a sudden, like, that technically isn't tummy time, it's going to be great because it's going to be beneficial to
Mm,
get that sensory engagement to their belly. We always want to make sure that tummy time is when they're quote unquote awake.
mm,
But if we're awake at all and just trying to see you, right? And like just lifting your head up, you can change the angle. The lower you go, the harder it makes tummy time, but the easier it is for them to see you a little bit versus high up. They so you change the angle, it pitches everything. But you prop those arms underneath the shoulder, and here's some tips for everybody. When they're super young, there's a physiological flexion component, right? So they were in the womb, you are in that nice like tight position. That's called physiological flexion.
yeah.
I really get into the weeds about it. This is why premature babies tend to be more extension based because they lose those last little bit of
Yeah.
weeks
Is
in
that
the
kind of like
womb.
the newborn scrunch when they scrunch up? Is
Yes, yes,
yeah, perfect. Okay,
100%.
cool.
It's
Awesome.
newborn scrunch. So it's a prim. It's so there's that because they are so used to being like that in the womb, and depending on the size and how long they've been in gestation, that can change. Sorry, I'll move in a second. That can change how much they're curling over. But there's also a primitive reflex, right? So I feel like now. Hold on, I'm
Oh,
gonna change because this might be a.
it actually was quite good, mate. It had you sort of looking a little bit godlike in the
Godlike.
distance there.
Jeez. All right. All right. So I'm gonna reframe that again.
There you
So
go again.
so Yeah, sorry. So yes, there's also a primitive reflex that early on, if a baby is flexing their lower half or flexing their upper half, the body is going to respond in the same way. It's either all extension or all flexion. So many parents run into the challenge of when they're trying to do tummy time on the floor, if their knees are tucked under and in that little scrunch, it's going to be impossible for them to lift their head up
Yep.
physically because of the primitive reflex that's built in. I also like to frame it. I always try to bring it to like a parent. So like they can be like, oh, that makes sense. If you've practiced yoga and you're doing like child's pose coming down where your butt's in the air and your knees are tucked under, try to lift your head. It's
Yeah. It's
impossible. You can't. You can't do it. So
yeah,
what
yeah,
happens?
yeah.
Have to like, so let's say you're in that early on stage and you got your child kind of leaning on you. If you just like unflex those hips a little bit and like kind of loosen them up, just bring them down, they're not going to straighten out fully because they're too young to be doing that. You start to get, as you get closer to 3 months, you can start to get them more open. But if you just like open those up a little bit, all of a sudden it creates more room coming down into the lumbar spine, into the sacrum, and it creates more of an ability to actually flex, not flex, extend up and then look at you. So, right. So now we're in that situation. Yeah, cool. Newborn baby. We're hanging out here. Now we're getting skin to skin. We're getting awesome tummy time. And as a dad, your mom or whoever, right? Because it doesn't just have to be, they can do
Yeah.
it in between their legs, of course, as well. You're getting just like those moments. Those moments you probably won't forget. Where, there's times where, I don't know if we're going to have another child. So, like, sometimes looking down at Margot, I'm like, okay, this might be the last time that I'm going through this. And like, it's 3 a.m. and you're doing this and you're hanging out and you're just like, then just like kind of looking at you and you're just like, oh, like you're now, again, that purposeful play, but you're also getting a meaningful moment in your life. And just those little changes of, all right, let's untuck those hips a little bit. Let's get those arms under the shoulders versus out or whatever to kind of prep them for a little bit more success is, you know what? You get 3 minutes of a little head lift there on and off. That's amazing, amazing floor play. It's on your chest, but tummy time for a 3 day old baby, amazing. So, yeah, you think back, Matt, into like when you were with your children and you're like, oh, I didn't get that much tummy time because I didn't put them on the floor. And then it's like, no, you had all of that time doing that. With your children. And that's stuff you'll never forget because of the moments you share, but you were also setting them up for a gross motor success by doing all that stuff, which is really cool, right? Like that's
Yeah.
the whole goal.
Absolutely, man. And I think it's like, like you just like that small little movement. I never thought because when we're doing tummy time, you never think about the legs. Like it sounds so dumb, but like you got your hand placement and you can sort of move it around and stuff like that. And you never think to like I never even thought put two and two together with the newborn scrunch. And of course they're going to tuck their legs in, and yeah, just that small change. And I guess I still remember now, like moving Summer and Skylar's legs out a little bit, just like sort of thinking, okay, but then obviously you're sort of second guessing yourself because you're like, is this right? Does this count? Once again, does this count as tummy time and stuff like that? Um, question this is something that I've heard and well, I didn't hear it, but I had conflicting stuff around it. And but like putting like we sort of had a breastfeeding pillow and we never actually used the breastfeeding pillow for its purpose. I tend to just use it because it's a great pillow to wrap around and sleep and they're always really comfy. But putting something under your child to sort of prop them up, like is it is that good? Is that okay? There's nothing wrong with that?
Totally fine. We use that all the time with our early on kiddos. So there's a couple of different benefits to that. So when we're talking, so breastfeeding pillows or any prop underneath them, you can roll a towel up, you can do those different things. 100% beneficial. You have to be careful on how you're doing it, only because if you use a boppy, it actually will feed into the newborn scrunch, that breastfeeding pillow,
Yep,
a
yep,
little
yep.
bit more because if their arms are up and they tuck their hips under, it actually frees up a little bit of space, right? So, you know what? Sorry. One of the other things I mentioned with parents, especially with 3 months and younger, but really even up to six, it's like pick one thing that you're trying to focus on for that gross motor play or whatever you're doing. If you want to be doing tummy time and you're trying to lengthen the amount of tummy time that you're doing, use a wedge, use a breastfeeding pillow, use a towel. It will naturally just make life a little bit easier. let's relate it to parents again. If you're struggling doing push-ups, what makes it easier? Doing it on a wall or doing it on an incline. You're going to be able to do more of them. Now, do you only want to do that? No. You
Yep.
still want to be getting the other, like the variability of doing it on the floor and doing it
Yeah,
up and
yep,
things.
yep. I get you.
But if you're like, you know what, I just want to lengthen tummy time a little bit more for this day, you can prop them up on a wedge or a pillow. And I'll recommend wedges only because then it's easier to lose that newborn scrunch and get out of that physiological flexion a little bit because it's more of a flat coming down surface versus the boppy. But you can use the boppy, you can use a towel just rolled up and what you have to think about is like, all right, in this stage, what are we looking for? Are we trying to get a little bit more head lift? Great. If you're trying to do that, recognize that that maybe minute long tummy time that they're used to doing is probably only going to be about 20 seconds. If you're trying to challenge them a little more, lifting that head up, you're you're making them work harder or you can prop them up. I think I shot this. I don't know if I posted. No, I actually did post it the other day. It's like I had Margot coming off the wedge and I had the contrast card underneath her. Now she's holding her head in midline, kind of hanging off of the edge a little bit. And she's not technically lifting her head at all. So she can't interact with the world. But if you create an incline and then bring the world that she wants to interact with underneath her, now she is interacting with it. All of a sudden, now instead of that 30-second tummy time, maybe you're getting 2 minutes straight because she's looking down at the contrast card and it's making her life a little bit easier. Again, focus on one thing. We increased tummy time endurance by doing that and made the other stuff a little bit easier. And that sort of variability can completely change how you're doing tummy time and how much more of an enjoyable experience it is. So yeah, long-winded answer again, but yeah, use those things. We use them all the time in the clinics.
Yep.
We'll use wedges. We'll use physio balls to help, get them on there and we can tilt them and move them in different directions to make life a little bit easier. But yes, definitely there are tool in your toolbox to use. You should not use it exclusively because there's nothing like getting them on the floor because that's going to functionally be more realistic for them as they're playing on the floor, but it's a great way to mix things up and use them, especially if we're struggling early on.
Yeah, mate, I love that. That's fantastic advice. And like I said, it's advice I wish I got given when I was a first time dad because there's obviously those parts where you almost like felt like you always felt like you were like cheating a little bit, being like putting something under them, being like, oh, I'm making this too easy for them. And but I guess using that like I guess training wheels analogy, like they're probably not going to learn how to properly ride a bike if they've got training wheels on, but they're going to learn the fundamentals, and eventually you can take the training wheels off because if you put them on a bike straight away and they keep falling off, it's going to suck. It's going to suck really bad if you keep doing that. So I think having that
For sure.
idea of, yeah, having that idea of variability, I think is a really good word that you mentioned when you're explaining it too, and not feeling bad, I guess, if you are using those things to sort of break the tummy time up because, as I said, it can be really draining on you doing it as well. But sort of on the line of further development and a little bit more, obviously what are sort of things that we sort of we don't like to be negative about these things, but I think everyone needs to be informed about them. But what are sort of signs or sort of ages they may get to where you may think, okay, if they're not sort of getting this now, there may need to be like an intervention or a little bit, or someone to sort of go see someone like yourself, or like what sort of things would parents be kind of looking out for? Obviously not straight away. Like if they come out and then they're not doing tummy time, obviously that's not a problem. But like, what would parents be sort of looking out for to then go, okay, we may need to see someone about this?
Sure, sure. Um, I'm just gonna also acknowledge, so I'm gonna answer your question and also acknowledge I feel like so many times as pediatric physical therapists, we get caught up talking about the babies and all of that, knowing that that question you asked me is appropriate throughout their overall developmental life. So to answer it more broadly, um, we kind of mentioned comparison earlier and talking about how that can get you into trouble, but that's also an indicator to not put this intense pressure on, but it should be like a little bit of like a light bulb, like, all right, maybe my 6 month old isn't doing what another multiple other 6 months old are doing or 9 month olds are doing. It's a little bit harder, but sometimes it's like I noticed that my 6 year old is struggling to keep up with the other kids when they're playing soccer or football, for you guys. And it's like, okay, I'm noticing that. you know what? If I look further into it, I'm noticing like their gait looks a little different than some of the other kids. Great. That's those inquisitive, that's the inquisitive mindset that leads you to then just wanting to seek out that question, like, wanting to seek out someone professionally who can help you. Um, I it's kind of a worldwide issue just because with my job, I'm now interacting with so many people across the world where, um, many times if you're asking your skilled health professional, it if it's not glaring, they're not gonna totally flag it for you, and it requires the parents to be a little bit more you're trying to be nice here. Have to be more of an advocate for themselves and for their own child.
Yep,
There
yep,
is there is absolutely nothing wrong with ever getting physical, speech, occupational therapy, any of those, any therapy in general. But like, I'll speak about what I know. Any of those things, if you feel like your child isn't where they want to be, or you just feel like you honestly want the extra support as a parent, and that is the other component of it, where it's like, maybe you just want a little bit more yourself. That's going to be maybe a little harder to justify to insurance, but there's other
mm,
options out there, cash based and different things like that, where you can seek the help if you want it. Um, so, um, you know, it that's going to be the initial thing that usually is going to trigger then, getting the help and getting the support. Um, Shoot, I feel like I just lost my train of thought. Initially getting the help and support that you want. You don't want to be looking for these things, but if you notice that, we talk about like, honestly, a lot of times it's like that you'll see it online or you'll see it around. It's like that mom gut, that mom guilt, whatever.
yep, yep,
Let's frame it as parent. Let's frame it as parent guilt,
yep,
right?
yep,
Because
yep.
as fathers, you could be feeling that too. However you identify. Um, if there's something that you want, like, if you want to support your child more, if you want to be doing that, or if you think they just need the extra help and support, there's, like I said, you could reach out and ask a question. Some countries, in the United States, it's direct access, but other places you might need a prescription from your pediatrician or your skilled health professional to then go and do that. We're trying to make things more accessible. Healthcare is about always being more accessible. I call it initial consultations. Some people call it, wellness checks, different things like that, where you're operating slightly outside of quote unquote healthcare, but you're talking about things in wellness, in healthcare. Those are all available to people if they're so inclined to seek out that information. So that's again, I'm going to say this all the time, a long-winded answer to when you should want to seek help, other than when you're getting it recommended from a skilled health professional if there's
Yep,
something more
yep.
serious going on. But the earlier the better is my other statement. It's that fine line you're walking where, yeah, you don't want to be looking for it immediately, but it's kind of like us. If we feel like a little bit of like a nagging injury or like something going on, and we let that kind of fester for a while, it's going to be a longer road when we're rehabbing that than if we just jumped on it when we initially felt that calf pain early
Yeah,
on when
yeah.
we
I
were
feel like it's a
that.
very inherently male thing too. Like I know, because my eldest daughter, she went to see an OT, and we
Yeah.
like there's just a couple things like balance and things like that. And like Kia, my partner, she's obviously in healthcare, and she's really
Yep.
big on like similar to what you said. Like, I can see like little things, so let's just go get it checked out. But for
Yes.
me, I don't know what it was. I don't know if it's a male thing. Like, obviously, I'm big into sport. And so, like, the kids' motor skills are always something that's very important to me. But you always have this feeling inside you of like, no, they're fine. What are you worried about? Like, they're fine. They're fine. But I think there is a little bit as well. There is truth to it being like, okay, well, yeah, maybe their balance isn't that good or something like that. And, especially with Sky, like, her balance wasn't terrible. Like, you take the comparison out of it. I was looking at her against other kids and I was like, oh no, she seems fine, whatever. But then I was thinking about it on myself and being like, well, I want her to, if this is going to be a problem, I want this to be fixed. And I think I'm very lucky that Kia, my partner, pushed me to go, no, let's go see an OT. And I'll
Sure.
tell you, it was one of the best things we ever did, man, because I then started to realize like, okay, there are a couple different things, but we've worked on those things from such an early age, mate. She is like, she does gymnastics now and she's incredible at it. And I'm like, that's a bit of a dad win for me, like being able to swallow
That's
my pride and be like, no, okay, let's go check something out. So yeah, I think it is a very male thing.
It can be. And it's really just trying to get out in front of children developing compensatory movement patterns to, maybe something that they're encountering. Okay, let's take your daughter's balance, for
Mm.
example. If we're struggling with that, kids are super resourceful and super smart. Um, right, we talked about babies a lot. Babies will also create compensatory movement patterns, but let's talk about like that 7 or 8 year old child or your daughter who's 4 or 5.
Yeah.
And it's like, all right, I'm struggling with single leg balance on my right leg, but maybe if I twist my body just like a little bit, I can kind of lock out my hip a little bit more to give me some slight stability. Awesome. So in that single leg balance activity, now I've learned how to do that. But then I go to use that leg functionally on the balance beam, and I'm trying to do like like a tumble or something through it. And now because I've compensated, I've actually have a little bit more asymmetry, weakness in that hip. And it's like now when I go to do a move, I have to compensate again around it. So now I'm torquing my back in a different way to compensate. And it just like exactly. So like if you get on it early, it just gives less opportunity to create those compensatory strategies. And again, at the end of the day, it's like it's purposeful play, it's fun, it's going to help children participate in their lives more easily. Um, Not to go down the road of like we talked about, like a lot of us, played sports or are athletes or whatever. We're not here to like push your kid to be an athlete. If they want to do that, great. Like, but even just like having more fun throughout the day, if it allows them to access their environment or their peers or just hanging out with their friends more easily, like why wouldn't we do that? I've genuinely never met a parent who's like, I'm bummed I did physical therapy unless they had like a bad physical therapist or
Yeah,
whatever.
yeah, yeah.
They're never disappointed. They're like, you know what? Maybe I wasn't able to 100% work on the thing that we did, but I learned all of these different strategies to kind of help my child. So it's like it's going to be a beneficial experience for everyone, and that's our goal, is to create that for parents, for children to have fun with that. But it should always be a win. It should always be fun. And yeah, if you do it early, you kind of get out in front of those things. It's my last little note here is like you deal with a lot of haters now in comments and Instagram or whatever,
Yep,
but
yep.
like
I feel
in
that.
general in life, like honestly, it's a lot of grandparents I'll deal with sometimes.
Oh,
And it's
yep,
like, well,
yep.
my kid did this and it's fine. I'm sure I'm gonna resonate with a lot of people that are doing that. Like, we
Hmm.
did this and it's fine. And it's like, all right, sometimes we swing a little bit too hard in one direction of like going overboard as generational swings and stuff like that. But like overall, as we learn more, as we get more research, as we get more information, learning new strategies, learning new things is not a bad thing. I so often will use the comment like, oh, no, like, okay, let's say this person was like, or said something to me that, this child's going to get it on their own. Stop. You're like, you're messing with nature, you're doing whatever. And I'm like, we just throw our kid a book and say, read? Like, no, we actively sit there with them and like teach them how to read and do these different things. And it's like, how is that any different than gross motor milestone development or like gross motor development? It's like we shouldn't expect them to be born and have this ability to do this stuff without us being there to actively coach them. And what's really cool is to kind of tie it back to what you said earlier, which is like, I didn't realize how much tummy time I did. Another experience that's one of my favorite ones is when I'm talking to parents and I'm talking to them about how we can support this. And they're like, wait, I did that. Wait, I did that. I did that. And it's like, yes, you don't even realize probably all of the different things you're doing to help support that child's development. And we're there to highlight it and talk about it and provide you different strategies on how to do it a little bit differently. But if you're just showing up, trying, actively engaging, and supporting them, you're probably doing your own physical therapy, your own gross motor support just by being active in their overall development whatsoever. And so I think that sometimes is the coolest part, especially for people that don't know they're doing it. Um, I hate the comments that are like, just let them figure it out on their own. Who figures out anything on their own in
Oh,
life?
dude.
You're there
Yeah,
to help
I
someone
know, man. Yeah. But I think the other
out. So
thing too is like I think people have this idea that like like obviously your job is to help kids, but I think people have this idea that if they go and see, a specialist or something, that they're like, oh, this person's gonna judge me. And you're like, no, they won't.
please, no, they won't.
Yeah,
No, they won't.
exactly.
No, they
Um,
won't. It's
yeah.
the silliest thing. I mean, I don't know. You saw Brett posted his son graduated from
Yes,
his helmet.
I was gonna
The
talk about that.
stupidest.
Yeah.
It was the stupidest thing. No one should ever judge a child for wearing a helmet. It's so silly. There should be no judgment. There's no judgment in any of this stuff. There's no judgment if you need support for your child. There's no judgment if you need support for yourself to just learn different strategies that are helpful for you. We're here to help in just any way we possibly can. Parents, kids, both, all the above.
Yeah, exactly, man. I think that's really good. And on the stuff that you did with Brett as well, I think Brett's doing amazing stuff. And I was so stoked when I saw you linked up with him for that video because that is something I think it's the thing about the helmet too. And me and Brett sort of spoke about this off sort of recording that it is one of those things where when it's a physical aid, like when it is a physical thing that people can see, that is the thing that's going to help. I think for some reason parents feel like, I'm worried my kid will get judged. I'm worried this or that. And you're just like, we're talking about a baby here. Like if someone is judging a baby, there's something wrong with that person's life that has got them to that point, you know?
Preach,
Yeah.
preach. There is, you know, I we don't do right. So like cranial tech, other companies, orthotic companies are
Mm.
doing the helmets, but we work so closely with them with our children that have torticollis, plagiocephaly, different things like that. That we're working together all the time. Um, it's it's something that as you become a better pediatric physical therapist, if you're working with that child, you're starting to sprinkle that conversation in if you kind of see it coming over time because you're recognizing the taboo nature, I guess, of a helmet or like this overall like stipulation of like there's something again wrong with your child. There's not. You're just helping them. It's like a cast on their arm, but it's on their head to help their head shape out. Like it's not a problem. But it's this thing like baby number one, you just you're going through it the first time. You just want your child to be perfect, and that is like a physical representation of your child is quote unquote not perfect. And it's like, first of all, no one's child's perfect,
Mm.
but they're your child, so they're perfect to you. That's what
Yeah.
matters. And
Yeah.
it's like, okay, but if you get them that support then and early, it's going to pay off in dividends down the line. And so you're having that conversation, you're reframing it. And so many times it's a hard one for like first time parents to swallow, or if they've had no exposure to it whatsoever. And then it's so interesting to have that conversation with, many times we get another round, like, okay, hey, I worked with this mom and dad on their firstborn child. They're going into their secondborn child with so much more knowledge and whatever. And sometimes like, they know they have big babies and they're a small mom. So it's they're positioned inside the womb to be a little bit scrunched up. They know they're going to come out possibly with torticollis because of the space. So they know they're going to need their helmet. And it's like they just come into it with such a different
Yeah.
mindset and
Yeah.
aspect, and our goal is to try to like create that mindset like throughout for all parents, so
Mhm.
it's not this like it's not this taboo thing, or it's not this like handy, like it shouldn't feel like that for parents or for children in general, because you're just helping to you're just totally helping to support them and stuff like that.
Yeah, I was gonna say, man, that would be especially now, that would be a very tough. I can imagine that can be a tough conversation at times when you are if you have parents that are sort of have that mindset too. So I can definitely sort of see the I guess the struggles that you might go through, especially with a parent that's I guess pushes back on you a little bit. I can imagine that's very tough at times.
You can only lead a horse to the water. You can't make him
Yeah,
drink it. So the pushback is definitely hard. Um, and I said it earlier, like the hardest part of our job sometimes is working with parents. It's working with parents who are consistent with their home exercise program and doing
yeah,
stuff like just coming to us in the clinic or just coming to us and virtually or however you're seeing us is not enough. They need to actively be invested in it. And if you're getting that pushback, it's really hard. Sometimes the kid's okay, but then there are some times where behind closed doors, we go back and we vent to our coworkers and we're just like, this parent is just being such a pain in my butt. Like, I know that this child is now going to struggle because they're pushing back against this or they're doing that. And honestly, the parents are getting in their own way. That is one of the hardest things as a pediatric physical therapist or, whoever.
oh man, I
Um,
see that as a teacher too. Honestly,
yeah,
yeah,
as a teacher too, like, come on.
yeah,
I mean, this is not exclusive to us by
yeah,
any
yeah,
means.
yeah.
But yeah, it's the hardest thing to know that they're kind of only hurting themselves, but you can only do so much.
Yeah, 100%, man. Like that's a really good point to take. And I guess trusting that the person knows what they're doing. Like, you're a
Yes.
professional, you know what you're doing. This is your thing. And giving trust into that as well. But I guess leading on, obviously the next big point that I know is you're probably going to see this coming already. Uh,
Sure.
walking, mate. What is obviously that's a tough one because I don't know if you've seen the episode. Obviously, being in Australia, Bluey is like our parenting go-to, and there's obviously the episode named Baby Race, where it's like, as you said, Chili goes to the mums group, she gets comparative, and then it's the mum with 6 kids that comes to the rescue and says, "Hey, look, don't compare. It's all good. You're going to be okay." But sort of in those fundamental stages where you can sort of start seeing your child sort of progressing to a point where they do have, I like to call it the stanky leg, where they're sort of putting their leg down and moving around.
Yeah.
In those early days, what are sort of the best sort of ways to go about, I guess, nurturing and fostering those early movements so it does promote sort of that element of walking? Because I know there is so many different things involved with walking and even just leading up to it, crawling, doing the commando crawl, things like that. But what are sort of the things when you start to see your child get to the point where you think, okay, we could probably get there? Because it is really nerve-wracking as well, right? Like seeing them walk and they do fall and things like that. But what are sort of things parents could do? And I saw you posted a couple videos recently, just getting, I think it might have been Theo, your son, getting him up and doing that sort of stuff. What are sort of some different things that I guess parents can do in the early days to make sure that they're really fostering their ability to walk?
It's a great question. Um, I find that walking is the milestone that sitting and walking.
Yeah.
Walking is the milestone I feel like that parents try to rush and trying to get to walking sooner. They think it's like this badge of honor that like, oh, my child walked at 9 months, and my child walked at 10
Yeah,
months.
I was gonna ask, is that there room is there truth to the thing of, because even my parents told me this, and I don't know if this is sort of like an old wives' tale, but you almost don't want your child to walk too early. Is there truth to that?
100% truth to it. I don't love when if your child did all their milestones and was just an early kiddo,
Mm.
um, like, and if you've supported them kind of from day one, like Theo was walking by 11 months, like that's technically early. Like we
Mm.
supported him the whole way there. We didn't overly force him to do any walking, like it just kind of organically happened. There's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah.
If but yes, there is an element to like walking too early is not necessarily the best thing. So my biggest thing is that developmental milestones exist for a reason. Why the CDC got rid of crawling as a milestone is beyond me. It's absolutely foolish. They did it because they were unable to completely identify what is an appropriate age for crawling to happen. If you would have talked to any number of physical therapists, they could have told you that. Um, every stage matters and it stacks on top of the other. A child is born with primitive reflexes, and then what they do is they stack motor patterns on top of that and motor planning, right? So rolling will eventually help them crawl and sit up. Crawling, army crawling will help them quadruped crawl, will help them pull to stand more effectively. Pulling to stand will help them then cruise. Cruising is going to help them with multi-directional stability in standing, being able to move from one object to the next, which is going to eventually lead to walking. We try to skip these steps way too often. And all of a sudden, we try to like start to put our kids in standing too early because there's a primitive reflex that the positive support reflex where they like to stand. You'll see it all the time. My 4-month-old only loves to stand. It's like, please put them back on their belly. That's where they belong. They don't
Yeah.
belong in
Yeah.
standing. And it's like we're trying to like rush. I love that. I know very well the episode of Blue you're talking about. Theo
Yeah.
hasn't discovered it yet because he's a little young. But like it's such a great show.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's sometimes you need like that mom to come in and kind of help you out, like ground you a little bit. But we're not in a rush to walk early. We um early walking, many kids will be totally fine. Sometimes it actually encourages poor habits, right? Like, let's say they it could lead to toe walking because maybe they don't have the muscle development in their legs to be ready to be doing that yet. And if we're overly forcing our child to be in front of like a push walker or to be in a sit-in walker, which are terrible and everyone
Oh,
should,
beautiful. I was literally, I was like, put a pin in this. I just thought of that in a second. Like, are they, is that, what's your opinion on no go?
out.
Okay,
The sit-in
amazing.
walkers are outlawed in many countries, honestly, for safety reasons of tipping them over. But a
Okay.
lot of the previous generations use them. They don't teach your kid how to walk. They teach your kid how to lean and let their legs kind of catch up underneath them, which does not help them at all. It doesn't
Yep.
teach them how to actually move. Um, the so we're not in a rush to get walking. What we want to just be doing is fostering their development appropriately in whatever they're experiencing. And honestly, people ask me all the time, how do you help your child walk? Because so many times it's there. I hear this a lot from parents, and I never have the courage to tell them that it's not the case, but it's like, I know my child can do it, but they're not. I hate to be the guy to be like, they actually can't, and that's why they're not.
Yeah.
Your child will be kind of hardwired to do it. Um, but if they're holding on to you, it's likely a manifestation of them not feeling 100% balanced in standing. So to answer your initial question, the best way to work on walking is to not work on walking. It's actually to uh, let them appropriately develop through each milestone and give them time in that milestone in crawling, which is why it's super important and we don't want to skip it to get to walking in all four quadruped, which is what's called creeping. We're learning reciprocal movement patterns. We're learning how to stabilize one side of our body and move the other. We're now learning how to go cross midline and actually sequence like our right arm's moving with our left leg, left arm moving with our right leg. We're developing core strengthening by doing that. And then it sets us up to be able to pull the stand going through a half kneeling position. So now all of a sudden our muscles are getting stronger bending and standing instead of just placing your child in standing, not letting them learn that flexion movement pattern, all of a sudden now they're stuck in standing. They might be able to cruise all day long, but what they can't do is weight shift their body outside their base of support without holding on to anything because they've never learned how to control through, they've learned how to control through an extension movement pattern, but not flexion. So my biggest advice to parents is like, okay, work on crawling. Then as they're going up into pulling to stand, awesome. Let them cruise. Let them cruise transition to another object. Work on posterior standing, which is one of my favorite things to do. Them standing against an object and hands free. That multi-directional stability, what is what I call it, is going to set them up to walk better than just walking them over and over and over again. Um, I'm not against push walkers, but I'm against using them at the wrong time. And a lot of times it's like babies in standing, time to give them a push walker. Nope. Work on that other stuff first. And then when they're ready and they're more stable and they're standing more appropriately, now they're indicating to you that they're ready for that next stage. Now it's time to start walking. Give them that push walker, let them build that endurance, but they're going to do it with control. And you can 100% as a physical therapist see a child who learned multi-directional stability while walking, but before walking into a differently from a child who never learned that stuff and only walked and they can only move linearly. They're catching themselves on another surface. They're only walking surface to surface. They're
Yeah. Yeah.
not walking, stopping, turning, changing direction. And I find those linear walkers, those ones that are trying to get to something, are those early walkers that like were maybe like this race to get there. No, there's a reason walking is 12 to 18 months. Now we want to start to work with a child at 15 if they're really delayed, but there's a reason that stage is so much larger than every other gross motor milestone. It's because you don't need to rush it because many times those late walkers later in that range that have worked on that multi-directional stability are going to be more stable than maybe those early walkers. And it's cool. By the time they're two, most of those kids are going to be all on the same level anyway. But like we don't need to rush it. And there's like this rat race to get a child to walk sooner than they are.
Oh man. Yep. Yep.
Focus on the little stuff. It all stacks on top of one another. There's a reason, you don't learn long division before you learn simple division, right? Like it's like you got to take the time to actually be hitting all of those specific milestones.
Yeah, oh, that's incredible advice, man. I love that because, like you said, it is like I don't know what it is about parents, but it's like the number one thing that I think people, I guess, not brag about, but like
It's a badge of honor.
it
My
is, it
kid walked
is.
early. It's something you can brag to your friends about at the
Yeah,
bar.
and I don't know why that is, but it just always is. And I guess leading in because obviously I'm a bit conscious of time, but and I want to sort of pitch something to you as well after this question, but. I guess we focus a lot on, the two things that I obviously focused on a lot as a parent, and I think a lot of people do as well, is obviously the tummy time and then the walking.
Yep.
But do you believe that there's sort of like, I'm going to say like a milestone, but also like sort of like an activity or something that you can be doing with your kids that you think is massively underrated, like something that I think is you think is really important, but it just doesn't get the emphasis that say like tummy time and or like floor play and walking gets. Is there something that sort of springs to mind?
Totally. I was talking about it the other day with one of my consults. We focus so much on like these big motor milestones. The most important thing a child can do is transition. If a child learns how to transition, they learn how to navigate their environment by themselves versus with the assistance of another. Don't steal the struggle. Learning how to roll in and out of tummy time is is kind of more important than just being able to hang in tummy time. If the child can't access that position themselves, it doesn't do them any good. What I tell parents is don't transition your kid, work on the transitions. My favorite thing to probably teach is sitting to prone and prone to sitting transition. It is the key to unlocking crawling in many aspects, but it also teaches them how to not be like this happy sitter where everything needs to come to them. Because sitting is that milestone where they're finally able to completely interact with like everyone around them. They're super happy and they're just like, hanging out and doing their thing. And if we always bring stuff to them or take them and put them on their belly, we're just doing them the disservice of not learning how to transition themselves. So, CDC website, all this stuff, like they focus on sitting, crawling. Well, crawling, you just heard me talk about that,
Yeah, yeah,
but
yeah.
like standing, cruising, there are all these mini milestones that as a skilled professional, we recognize the ability to transition in and out of sitting through a side sitting position, going bilaterally over both legs is like invaluable to setting up success for further milestones. And it's like we know that, but many parents don't. So
Mm,
the thing I would always emphasize is working on transitions is like they're all super important and it's not like one is going to unlock everything, but that one in particular is like genuinely the key to facilitating more independent movement of your child. It's great that they can stand up, but if they can't get themselves into standing, it doesn't benefit them at all,
yeah.
right? Like they need to be able to transition from sitting into standing and doing that. So um that is my biggest thing to emphasize is like transitions are so important and don't steal the transition from your child. So many times I'm working with them and it's like, oh, we go to the floor and then I'm like, all right, we're going to do that again. And the first instinct of many parents is to go
Oh,
and put
dude,
them back into
that is
sitting. And I'm
so
like, no,
crazy.
no, hold on.
Yep.
Let's roll that back. Let's bring that back. Let's go back up through side lying into sitting. And they're like, oh. And I'm like, if you just do that, every time you're trying to hang out on the floor with them, they will learn that very quickly and then they will start to do that themselves. So it doesn't need to feel like this burden to be doing all of these exercises. It's like, no, just build it into your general play. It's like if that opportunity is present every time you're going to the floor anyway, don't steal it. Do it. Right? The same thing with like utilizing what you're doing on a day-to-day basis in any way. That's our job is to build in exercises, to build in fun stuff to do with you so that it doesn't feel like there's only 24 hours in the day and we got to sleep. Like we can't do everything. So like building it in to be more efficient is the key. Work on those transitions. It's so invaluable for children.
Oh, I love that, man. Yeah, it's so funny. You've done this a couple times when you say something, and I like have to stop myself from jumping in because I'm like, I did that. That was me too. Like they get to the point, yeah, exactly. Like you go, okay, let's do it again, and you don't think to yourself, like the valuable movement is the going from here to here. And I'm kind of just getting in the way of that by going, well, we'll just put you back to where you started. And then, yeah, it makes so much sense. And like, I feel like as you get older and as a kid gets older, you get more comfortable with obviously letting them do that transition. But in those like really fundamental years, those really early years, you do catch yourself. Like, it's like this parental instinct to be like, oh no, I'll help you. It's all good. And realizing that you don't have to do that all the time.
No, no, you don't. No. Let them work through it. Yeah, don't steal the struggle is a big one, but
Don't
let
steal the
them
struggle, I think, is a really good way to place it, to put it.
for sure. For
Yeah.
sure. You
Oh,
said you wanted to pitch something to me?
yeah, man. Well, I was just thinking because I just realized like time is gone so quick, man. Because I'm just sitting here and
It's
just
easy to talk
absorbing
about.
all this, and it's so good. And I'm like, I don't think I really want to make this. I'm not going to say a regular thing, as in like every week, but man, I would love to do a couple more with you. Like,
Love it.
it may be like once a month or even whatever, because I think there's so many, like just now we've sort of spent like almost an hour, close to an hour and a half talking about the literal like first stages of life. And all these questions are coming to my head about like even going up to like 2, 3, 4, 5. Man, I would love to do something like this like every so often, like regularly, and have
Mhm.
you on as like a regular guest, because I think this information, I wish I had all this when I was a first time parent. Man, I think this conversation has been unbelievable for me, and I really
Thank you.
think it's going to be amazing. I'm really excited to put this out as well. But
Yeah.
I'd love to chat to you again
Yeah.
about the next phase as well, man.
Let's do it. I'm game in August.
Oh, hell yeah.
Um, I have the flexibility. I left my clinic job last year. I'm still in the hospital from like I want to learn myself. I want to keep pushing clinically. I want to work with those more medically complex kiddos and keep learning that. But one of the benefits of changing to like my consult based business, which is like the virtual stuff where I can meet with people all over the world and help them through some of these challenges from more of an education perspective, because the information's out there, but I'm there to fine tune it for you and make it appropriate for your child and whatever. But like, yeah, I totally I have the flexibility to do it. The more that we can get this information out there to parents before it's something that they need to worry about, or because so many times it's like you said, like I wish I had it before. A parent's gone through it. The second experience through their child is very different. If we can get that information to them beforehand, um, it's just going to benefit so many more people. Yeah, I love talking to you today. I would totally come on again
Oh, thanks, man. No, I've had such a good time, man. It's been so good. Like I said, I was like, I've got so many questions that I want to keep asking. I think we'd be sitting here for like 3 hours, and unfortunately,
it'd be a
I'm not
long one.
I'm not Joe Rogan yet, so I don't have the resources for a 3 hour podcast.
I
But
hear
man,
you.
I would absolutely love it. But I also, just before we sort of wrap up, I did want to mention that although you're based in America, you do, because I do have a lot of listeners up from Australia as well, but you also consult with people overseas as well.
All over the world. So, when I was creating my business plan, I'm trying to figure out what to do. Um, I knew there was a gap um, in this. I'm not the first one to be doing this by any means. There's a lot of other people doing it. I will say that there's not a lot of males doing it. So
Mm.
I do take pride in that. Like pediatric physical therapists are mostly female in general, honestly, occupational as well and speech. They're mostly female. I like being a male in the field. It's really fun. But when I was trying to create and do this, I kind of stumbled into it. I always wanted to do the Instagram page. I wanted to wait until I had children of my own just to not have the complications of trying to use other people's children. Um, and I just always wanted to get that information out there. But as I was kind of discovering, I'm like, how do I reach as many people as I can? So it's, they're virtual consultations where I can again, provide you exercises, work on different things. It can't replace physical therapy because nothing truly can for like in-person stuff. And I have to make sure that people know that. And all of my clients know that going in. But if they need more education, if they need more help with like home exercise programs, adapting it to like their home, that's all stuff that we can do where that information is out there. And again, I'm just providing like a more specific example and it's going to be more beneficial for them. So yeah, I work with people all over the world. I've had honestly many Australian clients. I've had a couple of people from Kuwait last week. I do Hong
Oh
Kong.
wow.
I had a lot of Indian clients. The UK is a big one of mine.
Yeah.
Um, and like wherever I can, where I can help people out, maybe they don't have the resources. Some people, are using it as a supplemental. Others are like, look, I know this isn't a replacement. But it takes me an hour and a half to drive to the nearest pediatric physical therapy clinic, and I just don't have enough time in my day to do that.
Mm.
Can you help me supplement and things like that? Um, yeah, so I'm not providing treatment sessions because you can't do that, but I'm providing you and trying to give you all the tools and the op and to use so that when you're working on stuff, you know and you have more of the knowledge to be utilizing the techniques that we could use in physical therapy or the different positions and again, education is power. Just knowing that a parent can facilitate and can do these things, can take you, you can work with a child who you know, minimally complex things that you're kind of working on. If there's a more medically complex child, of course, you need to see physical therapy in person. You need to do that. Like I will always be like, refer out, please. No, this isn't appropriate for me to be working with you. But for many of that population of just like I've found it's like parents who are eager to learn, and I'll do like monthly consult sessions with them on like, here's what to expect over the next month. Here's how you can facilitate it. Then there's other ones where I'll meet like bi-weekly because they just have a problem. Maybe they didn't qualify for early intervention. The child's not super delayed, but they just need a little bit of extra support. Awesome. Then I'll have other ones where it's like my insurance is only covering so much. I'm already getting physical therapy in person, but I love the way you do about it. I love your rapport with us. Like I love your vibe. Can you just help me with some supplemental stuff to work on at home? And I'm like, yep, 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 to all those. So it's been so eye-opening. It's been really cool. I love what I'm doing. I'm having more fun now than I ever had in my career. And I'm also finding that the results are speaking for themselves where it actually forces the parent to invest a little bit more time on their end versus them just coming to a clinic and having them have the child worked on by the physical therapist. They're learning more stuff with the movements themselves, and the benefits are speaking, like the outcomes are speaking for themselves because they're like it forces them to invest more time on their end.
Yeah, I love that, man. And one thing I got from you from the very start, I love when I start a podcast like this, especially with Zoom. Zoom can be a bit funny sometimes because there's almost like a wall between it. But man, your passion for like this is incredible. It's almost infectious, man. And I think that shows in the rapport that you must build with your clients because man, like I said, I love talking about this stuff and like you explain things in a really engaging way. Like I said it before at the start. I really struggle to sit still and like listen to things and read things, which is pretty ironic considering I run a podcast. But talking to you is, and I know you're always like, oh, that was a long-winded answer, but no, the way you explain things is really clear. And I don't know if I don't want to say it as like it's a weird thing, but like the way you explain things is really good for the male brain. Like the way you talk is really good for a guy. And I know like girls are just better listeners than guys, but you're really easy to listen to. So I think that's
Thank you.
one reason why I think you're doing so well, man, because it's great to sort of have that and being sort of like I guess as a little bit of an anomaly in the field being a guy.
Yeah.
I think it's great, man. I love seeing people like you doing really well, man. So I think that's a testament to you and the passion that you bring to the field. So I'm really stoked that you're able to actually come on and have a chat, man.
I'm looking forward to our next one,
Oh, dude, I
apparently. Let's do
can't
it.
wait. This time
Yeah.
around, I think I gave you two questions this time, but trust me, brother, I feel like I'm gonna have a lot more next time.
Yeah, let's do it, man. Whatever. And we can do that. I don't mean to be, you've done an amazing job of what you're wanting, but if people find this interesting and like if any of them like comment like questions and they want some of theirs answered, even if we did the next one, like I don't mind answering others of like other dads that are listening to this and have questions on their own. Like it's just talking about the conversation. It's just important to have the conversations. Honestly, one of the reasons I wanted to come on too is because I look at my demographics of my followers, it's 85% female and 15% male. And I want more dads talking about this.
Yeah,
And you're going to have
absolutely.
dads on your page following you. And I'm like, this is a great opportunity to get dads to have more of these conversations. I don't want to keep hearing that like my husband watches through my videos. I want to hear like, my husband sent me this video
Yeah,
of you
yep.
doing this because then it changes the the thing like I don't know,
It's like
as
the
guys
feed
like
of
I have a
information.
bunch of yeah, I have a bunch of
Mm.
group chats. We're not sending anything legitimate. We're sending all this BS stuff
Oh
to each
hell yeah,
other, and
man. I know.
sometimes it's like nice to talk about real stuff.
Yeah, I know what you
So
mean.
let's get dads talking about more real stuff. So I'm looking forward to doing another one. Let's do it.
Unreal, man. I'm so excited. Just
Yeah,
for people who want to get in touch with you, and obviously I'll be
yeah.
posting. You know what's great about this? I was just thinking before, as someone who makes content from their podcast, it is always so good to know that there is so many things that I can post about from the things that you were talking about. There's probably going to be like 7 videos just from this chat, which is
I'm game.
fantastic. So it'll
Love
be
it.
good for you too, because it'll go up on your page as well. But for
Yeah.
people who want to get in touch or find you and coming from the, and I'm not just saying this to, as we say in Australia, to blow smoke up your ass. You're actually doing a really great job.
Thank you. Thank
But and I would definitely advocate go follow your Instagram account. But if people want to get in touch or find you on Instagram,
you.
what's all the details?
I mean, you could just DM my Instagram. It's JT underscore the peds underscore PT. The easiest way, like I just prefer email in general. It helps me create a little bit of a thread. I do get a lot of messages sometimes, so it's hard to keep track of that. That's the easiest way to find me. But if
Yep.
you do want to email me, it's just the same name without the underscore. So it's just JT the peds PT at gmail.com. And you can reach out to me that way. I love having conversations. Please feel free to reach out um, yeah, I love what I do. So,
Oh, dude,
thank you for
it's
giving me
great.
the opportunity to talk about it more. I appreciate it,
Hey,
man.
anytime, man. I can't wait for the next one, and hopefully we have a couple more after that too. So I'll wrap it
Good.
up, man. But don't go anywhere. I'll stop the recording. But yeah, because I had one time where some guy left, and I was like, oh no, I want to say goodbye at least. But yeah. Anyway,
Yeah, yeah.
guys, yeah, go. But as I said, go over, follow JT. I love all this stuff, and I'll be probably posting a lot of it on my stories as well because I see things. I'm like, that's great. I want that. That's great. I'm going to post that. So yeah, just definitely get around it. But thank you guys for listening. As always, tuning in. If you want to get around the podcast, go over to @CoolDadCollective underscore on Instagram and @CoolDadCollective on TikTok. Or if you want to get in contact with the podcast, CoolDadCollective at hotmail.com. Guys, have a fantastic rest of your week. Be good to your kids. Make sure you're focusing on that tummy time or floor play, as we say now. And then don't rush the walking. You're going to be fine. Everything's okay. And yeah, guys, have a great rest of your week. Peace.